Welcome, friends, to English Empire, the space not only for improving your language, but also for leveling up your knowledge. Today's topic is special because we're talking about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of the most influential musicians in human history. His work shaped the way we understand melody, harmony, emotion, and creativity. Mozart didn't just write music, he changed music. His influence reaches every concert hall, every piano student, every orchestra, and even the way we hear film soundtracks today. Learning about his life helps you grow your English, your culture, and your appreciation for what human talent can achieve. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps the channel grow, and it motivates me to create even more lessons and stories for you. All right, let's start the journey. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart entered the world on January 27, 1756, in Salzburg. It was a quiet winter day, and the small city lay under heavy snow. His family lived in a modest apartment in the old town. The room was cold, but the family spirit was warm. His parents, Leopold Mozart and Anna Maria, welcomed their second child with hope and love. They had lost several children before, so this birth felt special. They named him Wolfgang Amadeus. Many would later call him a miracle. A home filled with music. Music surrounded him from the very beginning. His father, Leopold, was not an ordinary parent. He was a respected violinist, a composer, and a strict but loving teacher. He worked for the Prince Archbishop of Salzburg and wrote a famous violin textbook. Music was not only his job, it was his life. Their home was always full of sound, violins, singing, harpsichords, guests discussing concerts, students practicing. Young Wolfgang grew up listening to all of it before he could speak. His sister, Maria Anna, was 4 years older. Everyone called her Nonnerl. She was also highly talented. She played the clavier beautifully. People admired her skill when she was still a child. When Wolfgang was still a toddler, he watched her practice. He tried to imitate every sound. He stretched his tiny fingers on the keys. The family realized he was different. Most children pressed keys randomly. Wolfgang picked notes that made sense. Early signs of genius. Leopold soon noticed something extraordinary. At 3 years old, Wolfgang was already playing short pieces on the clavier. At 4, he could remember melodies after hearing them only once. At 5, he began composing small works. These first pieces were simple, but they showed something rare: clarity, structure, and emotional depth. Leopold wrote them down because Wolfgang was too young to write music himself. The boy's sense of pitch was perfect. He could identify notes without any effort. He could also hear mistakes instantly. If someone played a wrong note, he stopped and corrected them. For a child, this was astonishing. His father realized he was raising a prodigy. He felt proud, but also responsible. He believed it was his life mission to guide his son. Learning under Leopold. Leopold became Wolfgang's teacher in every sense. Their lessons were short, playful, and full of curiosity. There was no pressure. He allowed Wolfgang to explore. The boy learned fast. He mastered technical skills that normally took years. He practiced scales, arpeggios, and exercises. He learned harmony and rhythm. He wrote down small ideas and tried new patterns. Every day, he surprised his father. Wolfgang also learned the violin. He picked it up almost by accident. One day, he watched his father teach a student. After listening for a while, he asked to try. Leopold hesitated, but the boy insisted. When Wolfgang played, his father was speechless. His hand position was correct. His sound was clean. He played the entire piece without struggling. From that moment, it became clear that he could master almost any instrument he touched. A family that believed in talent. The Mozarts lived modestly, and money was often tight, but they supported their children fully. They believed in education, culture, and character. They taught their children languages, manners, and the importance of hard work. They encouraged curiosity. They also traveled whenever possible, because city life alone could not satisfy Wolfgang's talent. Salzburg was a small place, and Leopold understood that his children needed a bigger audience. People needed to see their abilities. This was the only way to open opportunities. So, he made a bold decision. He would take the children on tour. He wanted them to perform in Europe's great courts and show their brilliance to kings and queens. The first travels. In 1762, when Wolfgang was only 6 years old, the family traveled to Munich. They performed for the Elector of Bavaria. The audience was amazed. The children played flawlessly. Their small hands moved with confidence. Court members whispered to each other, "How could such young children play with maturity and precision?" This success encouraged the family. Later that year, they traveled to Vienna. They performed for Empress Maria Theresa. She welcomed them with kindness. The Empress admired their talent, especially Wolfgang's charm. He was lively, playful, and cheerful. He ran around the palace. He jumped onto the Empress's lap. He offered kisses to the royal children. People laughed at his innocence. He was not afraid of status or titles. He was simply himself. A little composer on the move. By the age of 7, Wolfgang's fame began to grow. People talked about him across Europe. Newspapers mentioned his skills. Letters describing his performances traveled from city to city. Some believed him a genius. Others thought such talent was impossible. But everyone wanted to hear him. Throughout 1763 and 1764, the family traveled through Germany, France, and finally England. These journeys were long and exhausting. They rode in small carriages for hours every day. The weather was harsh. Roads were rough. Money was limited. But Wolfgang never complained. He practiced during stops. He wrote music in inns and taverns. He performed in churches, palaces, and halls. Every performance strengthened his skills. Paris and the first major steps. Paris welcomed the Mozarts warmly. The French capital loved art and culture. It was full of artists, musicians, actors, and writers. The audiences were demanding but appreciative. Wolfgang performed in salons and private gatherings. People admired his control over the keyboard. He also played the organ in churches and amazed listeners with his improvisation. During their stay in Paris, his father encouraged him to compose more ambitious works. Mozart wrote sonatas for keyboard and violin. These pieces were published in early 1764, marking an important milestone. It was rare for a child to publish music. This achievement made people understand that his talent was not a trick. It was real and powerful. England and the meeting with Bach's son. The family then traveled to London, where they met Johann Christian Bach, the youngest son of Johann Sebastian Bach. Johann Christian had a gentle personality and treated young Mozart with kindness. He became a mentor and a friend. They played together. They improvised together. Wolfgang admired him deeply. This meeting influenced Mozart's style. Johann Christian's music was elegant, clear, and full of charm. Young Wolfgang absorbed these elements. He learned how to write music that sounded light yet meaningful. This shaped his future compositions. During their stay in London, Mozart also wrote symphonies. These early symphonies were simple but beautiful. They showed his natural sense of orchestration. He understood how different instruments worked together even at a young age. This ability would later help him become one of the greatest symphonic composers in history. Difficult moments on the journey. Traveling was not always easy. The family faced many challenges. They spent long nights on the road. They slept in uncomfortable rooms. They sometimes lacked proper food. Illness also followed them. Both children fell sick in London. Their father became desperate and worried. He did not want to lose his children, but they recovered slowly. Despite hardships, Wolfgang continued to compose. Music was his comfort. He wrote even when he was sick. His hands shook, but his mind stayed sharp. He composed small pieces and short exercises. He also kept practicing the violin and clavier. Return to Europe and new adventures. After leaving England, the Mozarts traveled to the Netherlands. There they performed again and gained more admirers. Wolfgang wrote several symphonies during this period. He also composed variations and other short works. His confidence grew. He began to understand the world around him. He observed people, places, and cultures. In 1766, the family returned to Paris, then headed back to Salzburg. But the rest did not last long. Leopold soon planned another major journey. this time to Italy, the Italian dream. Italy was the birthplace of opera. It was a land full of music, art, and passion. Every musician dreamed of visiting it. Mozart was no exception. At 14, he was already an experienced traveler. He had seen much of Europe, but Italy felt different. It was a new world. When the family arrived, they were welcomed with excitement. Italian audiences were strict, but highly knowledgeable. They recognized true talent immediately. Mozart impressed them from the first performance. He played with confidence and control. He also amazed people with his ability to compose on the spot. Studies and successes in Italy. While traveling, Mozart learned from leading musicians and composers. He studied counterpoint in Bologna. He met the famous theorist Padre Martini, who admired his intelligence. Martini tested him with difficult exercises, but Mozart solved them easily. He also visited Rome, where he performed for the Pope. The Pope awarded him the Order of the Golden Spur, a rare honor for such a young musician. One of the most famous moments in Italy happened in the Sistine Chapel. Mozart listened to the sacred piece Miserere by Allegri. The work was secret and not allowed to be copied. But after hearing it only once, Mozart wrote the whole composition from memory. This shocked musicians across Italy. It proved that his memory was extraordinary. When Mozart returned from Italy, he was no longer just a gifted child. He was now a recognized young composer. He had written successful operas, church music, and instrumental works. He had impressed kings, nobles, and famous musicians. But fame did not mean an easy life. He returned to Salzburg, a small city with limited opportunities. His father hoped the court would reward his son generously, but the reality was disappointing. Life in Salzburg after Italy. The Prince Archbishop of Salzburg admired talent, but he was strict and conservative. He did not see Mozart as a free artist. Instead, he saw him as a servant of the court. He was expected to obey orders, attend rehearsals, write music on demand, and play whenever requested. There was little space for creativity. The court paid him only a modest salary. It helped the family survive, but it did not match his skill. Mozart felt trapped. He loved his home and his family, but he wanted freedom. He wanted to compose more operas. He wanted to travel again. He wanted new experiences and fresh ideas. But the Archbishop did not allow constant travel. He believed Mozart should stay, work, and serve. Still, Mozart continued to write. He worked hard. He composed masses, symphonies, sonatas, and chamber music. He also continued to perform in Salzburg. His talent grew stronger. His music became deeper. He studied everything he heard. He learned from Italian styles, German styles, and French elegance. New projects, new conflicts. In the early 1770s, Mozart worked on several opera projects. He wrote Il Sogno del Scipio for the Archbishop's installation ceremony. He wrote other works for local events. but he longed for bigger stages. He wanted his music performed in major cities, not just in Salzburg. In 1773, the family traveled to Vienna again. Mozart heard many musicians there. He studied works by Haydn. He admired the balance and beauty in Haydn's symphonies. Haydn later became a strong supporter of Mozart's talent, but in 1773 they did not know each other personally yet. Mozart simply listened, learned, and absorbed new ideas. Mozart seeks independence. Mozart was growing older, and he wanted independence. He was no longer a child, yet people still treated him like one. His father, Leopold, remained strict. He loved his son deeply, but he wanted Wolfgang to follow a safe path. He wanted him to stay in secure employment. He feared the world outside Salzburg. He feared failure and poverty. But Wolfgang had a different vision. He believed that a true artist needed freedom. He believed in following his own path. In 1777, Mozart asked to leave the Archbishop's service. He wanted to travel and look for better work. The Archbishop refused. He argued that Mozart was needed. He argued that travel was expensive and uncertain. The argument between Mozart and the Archbishop grew intense. Mozart finally received permission to take leave, but only if his father stayed behind. Leopold accepted this duty. He remained in Salzburg, serving the court and protecting the family's position. Mozart was allowed to travel with his mother instead. Journey to Mannheim and Paris. In late 1777, Mozart left Salzburg with his mother. He felt excited, but also nervous. This was the first time he traveled without his father. He was now responsible for his future. They traveled to Munich first. Then they continued to Mannheim, one of the most musical cities in Europe. Mannheim had a famous orchestra known for its discipline and expressiveness. Mozart admired their style. In Mannheim, Mozart met new friends and fellow musicians. One of them was the Weber family. Their daughter, Aloysia, was a gifted singer. Mozart fell deeply in love with her. She inspired him. He wrote music for her. He hoped they would build a future together. But life moved in a different direction. Mozart tried to find work in Mannheim. He applied for positions. He performed in private homes and small gatherings. People praised him, but no one offered a solid job. The court orchestra did not hire him. The city admired his talent, yet they had no available position. He felt frustrated. Struggle in Paris. With no success in Mannheim, Mozart decided to continue to Paris. He had visited Paris as a child, but now he returned as a young man searching for recognition. Paris was busy, loud, and competitive. The music scene was full of rivalries. Audiences were demanding. Fame there required more than talent. It required connections, support, and luck. Mozart struggled to adapt. He found teaching work, but it paid little. He composed a few pieces, but the response was mixed. Some musicians supported him, others dismissed him. The pressure was intense. His mother worried. She tried to comfort him, but she also grew tired from the long trip. Then tragedy struck. In July 1778, Mozart's mother became seriously ill. Her condition worsened quickly. Doctors tried to help, but nothing worked. She died far from home, and Wolfgang was devastated. He blamed himself. He wrote a heartbreaking letter to his father. He felt guilt and deep sorrow. It was one of the darkest periods of his life. The loss changed him. He realized how fragile life could be. He also understood how hard the world outside Salzburg was. After a difficult stay in Paris, he decided to return home. Return to Salzburg again. When Mozart returned to Salzburg, he was not welcomed with excitement. His father was sad about the loss of his wife, and he was also disappointed. He felt Wolfgang should have stayed in Salzburg instead of chasing uncertain dreams. Their relationship became tense for a while. The Archbishop did not treat Mozart kindly either. He criticized him for leaving. He gave him low pay and heavy duties. He felt humiliated. He wanted to be respected. He did not want to be treated like a servant. His personality was lively, open, and independent. The court environment felt suffocating. Still, he continued composing. During this time, he wrote several symphonies, chamber works, and sacred pieces. His style became more mature. He experimented with new ideas. He studied the works of other composers. He improved his orchestration. He sharpened his sense of drama. Growing tension with the Archbishop. In 1780, Mozart received an opportunity to write an opera for Munich. The work was Idomeneo, a serious and powerful opera. It required dramatic depth and musical skill. Mozart accepted the project with enthusiasm. He traveled to Munich, worked with the singers, rehearsed with the orchestra, and poured his energy into the score. The opera premiered in 1781 and was a success. Audiences praised the beauty and strength of the music. This success gave Mozart confidence. He wanted to break free from the Archbishop's control. The Archbishop, however, demanded that Mozart return immediately to Vienna to serve him again. Mozart obeyed, but resentment grew inside him. Vienna, a turning point. When Mozart arrived in Vienna, tensions reached the breaking point. The Archbishop treated him with disrespect. He ordered Mozart to eat with the servants instead of the nobles. He refused to increase his pay. He scolded him for his independence. Mozart could not accept this treatment. He demanded to be released from service. The Archbishop was furious. He believed Mozart was ungrateful. Their argument escalated. The Archbishop's steward insulted Mozart and told him he was nothing without his employer. Mozart felt humiliated and outraged. He demanded his dismissal. Finally, the Archbishop agreed. Mozart was released, but not with honor. The steward literally dismissed him with a kick. It was a symbolic act meant to insult him. But Mozart felt free. A new life begins in Vienna. Mozart was now independent. He had no stable job, no steady income, no court protection, but he had freedom, and he planned to use it. Vienna was the heart of European culture. The city had wealthy patrons, great theaters, skilled musicians, and strong musical traditions. It offered the perfect stage for a rising composer. Mozart rented a small apartment. He lived simply, but he was full of ideas and determination. He began giving lessons. Teaching brought money, but also introduced him to wealthy families. Some students admired his talent and recommended him to friends. One student, the daughter of a noble family, became especially important. Her name was Barbara Ployer. Mozart wrote beautiful works for her, including piano concertos. Meeting the Weber family again. Vienna also brought another reunion. The Weber family moved there after their time in Mannheim. Mozart visited them. He did not end up with Aloysia, the daughter he had once loved. She had built her own life. She was focused on her career as a singer. She treated Mozart kindly, but without affection. Instead, Mozart grew close to another daughter in the family, Constanze Weber. She was cheerful, warm, and supportive. Their relationship developed slowly, but Mozart eventually fell in love with her. His father disapproved at first. He felt Constanze was not from a wealthy or noble family. He feared she could not support his career. But Mozart followed his heart. He believed Constanze brought stability and happiness to his life. Mozart the Freelancer. Life in Vienna as a freelancer was challenging. Mozart had to earn everything through hard work. He composed constantly. He played at concerts. He organized his own performances. He taught. He made connections with noble families. He joined social gatherings and musical evenings. He wrote piano concertos that showed his brilliance as a performer. He created chamber works that pushed the boundaries of the form. He also explored new kinds of music for small ensembles. His creativity seemed endless. Vienna appreciated his talent. His concerts were often full. Audiences admired his expressive playing and his ability to improvise on the spot. He was considered one of the finest pianists in the city. Yet financial security was never guaranteed. Some months were good, others were difficult. Growing artistic vision. By the early 1780s, Mozart had developed a personal style that blended everything he learned throughout Europe. He took elements from Italian opera, French elegance, German craft, and the emotional depth of sacred music. He combined them into a sound that was unmistakably his own. He also began to take greater risks. His music became more dramatic. His harmonies became more daring. His melodies became more expressive. He wrote for the human voice with great understanding. He shaped each phrase with natural flow. He built musical stories that felt real and emotional, creating masterpieces in Vienna. One of Mozart's major achievements in Vienna was The Abduction from the Seraglio. This opera was bright, lively, and humorous. It featured fast-paced dialogue and energetic music. It became popular and helped establish Mozart as a leading composer in Vienna. He also wrote many piano concertos during this period. These works allowed him to shine both as a composer and as a performer. They displayed elegance, brilliance, and emotional warmth. Many of these concertos are still considered some of the greatest ever written. He composed quartets inspired by Haydn. These became known as the Haydn Quartets. Haydn later told Mozart's father that Mozart was one of the finest composers he knew. Haydn admired the depth and intelligence in his writing. It was a meaningful compliment between two masters. Marriage and a New Home. In 1782, Mozart married Constanze Weber. Their wedding was simple. They did not have much money, but they were happy. Constanze supported Mozart's career. She understood his artistic needs and his personality. She also helped manage their household. Mozart worked tirelessly to support his new family. He accepted many students. He composed for various events. He performed in subscription concerts. Vienna's middle class was growing, and many people wanted music in their homes. This helped Mozart earn a living. He and Constanze had their first child, but the baby died in infancy. This loss was painful, but life continued, and the couple remained strong. They later had more children. The height of his Vienna success. Between 1783 and 1786, Mozart reached one of the most productive periods of his life. He wrote symphonies, concertos, chamber music, sacred works, and operas. His creativity seemed unstoppable. He experimented with new ideas and structures. He refined his style. Vienna recognized his greatness. Audiences waited eagerly for new concertos. Publishers asked for new works. Patrons commissioned compositions. Mozart felt inspired and energized. He felt he had found his place in the world. But new challenges were approaching. By 1786, Mozart had reached a powerful stage in his career. His music was admired across Vienna. His piano concertos were celebrated. His name appeared in newspapers and cultural discussions. He stood at the center of the city's musical life. Yet his success was fragile. Vienna loved new things quickly, but it also changed direction without warning. Mozart enjoyed praise, but he also faced competition and unstable income. The next years would bring triumph and trouble, joy and fear, and some of the greatest works ever written. A new chapter. The Italian Librettist. In 1786, Mozart began working with Lorenzo da Ponte, an Italian poet and librettist living in Vienna. Da Ponte was clever, expressive, and full of humor. He also understood human emotions deeply. He could write characters that felt alive. Mozart found him inspiring. Their partnership produced some of the most famous operas in history. The first result of their collaboration was the Marriage of Figaro. The Marriage of Figaro. The opera premiered in Vienna in 1786 It was fresh, witty, and bold. It told the story of servants outsmarting their noble masters. Some people feared it might offend the aristocracy, but the music was irresistible. Mozart filled it with energy, clarity, and emotional truth. Every character felt human. Every scene flowed naturally. The audience admired the opera. They applauded many scenes. But Vienna's political tension prevented it from being a huge sensation. Still, the opera spread across Europe. It reached Prague, where audiences loved it even more than Vienna. Prague welcomed Mozart warmly. They respected his genius. When he visited Prague, he said one of his most famous lines, "My Prague people understand me." He felt at home there. Don Giovanni. A year later, Mozart and Aponte created another masterpiece, Don Giovanni. It premiered in Prague in 1787. The opera mixed comedy, drama, passion, and terror. It was full of life and death, laughter and fear. Mozart shaped every moment with precision. The music moved from soft whispers to explosive energy. The story followed the wild and destructive life of Don Giovanni, a man who refused to change his ways. The opera was a triumph in Prague. Audiences were overwhelmed by its power. They recognized something new, something deeper than anything they had heard before. Vienna, however, was slower to understand it. Some people felt confused by the mixture of styles, but Mozart did not change his approach. He trusted his vision. Financial struggles began. Mozart's creative strength continued, but his money problems began to grow. He lived in a city that admired luxury. He wanted to give his family comfort and respect. He rented a good apartment. He bought fine clothes. He hosted musical evenings. He kept a piano, a small billiard table, and books. These things made life pleasant, but expensive. Vienna's economy also weakened. People spent less on concerts and lessons. Mozart's income dropped, but his expenses stayed high. He began to borrow money from friends. He wrote letters asking for small loans. These letters are still preserved today. They show a man full of anxiety, but also full of hope. He always promised to pay his debts soon. His wife, Constanza, also faced health issues. Treatment cost money. Mozart worried constantly. He tried teaching more. He tried giving more concerts, but demand changed from month to month. Some seasons were good, others were barren. Still, he kept composing. Great works born in hard times. Even during financial struggle, Mozart produced extraordinary music. In fact, some of his greatest works came from these difficult years. The three great symphonies. In the summer of 1788, Mozart wrote 3 symphonies in less than 6 weeks. Symphony No. 39, Symphony No. 40, Symphony No. 41, Jupiter. Many musicians today consider them among the greatest symphonies ever written. They combine clarity, power, warmth, and intellect. Symphony No. 40 is especially famous for its emotional intensity. It communicates deep sadness without words. Symphony No. 41 is full of energy and brilliant counterpoint. The final movement shows Mozart's mastery at its peak. But surprisingly, historians are not sure if Mozart ever heard these symphonies performed. They may have been played only once or twice. Some might never have been performed during his lifetime. A decline in public interest. Vienna began to change. New music tastes appeared. Audiences wanted simpler entertainment. They preferred lighter music and foreign musicians. Mozart's deep style no longer attracted crowds as easily as before. He felt forgotten at times. He continued writing operas, but success came unevenly. His opera Così fan tutte premiered in 1790. Its music was elegant and expressive, but the public reaction was mixed. Political problems in Europe also affected theaters. Many performances were canceled or shortened. Still, Mozart kept creating. He felt that music was his identity. Even when money was short, ideas flowed constantly. A journey to improve finances. In 1789, Mozart traveled to Leipzig, Dresden, and Berlin. He hoped these cities would offer new opportunities. He played for nobles. He performed in courts. He met musicians and composers. King Friedrich William II of Prussia admired his work. The king even commissioned pieces from him. The trip brought some money, but not enough to solve his problems. When Mozart returned to Vienna, expenses piled up again. His letters show a man who tried to stay strong but felt pressure growing heavier every month. The final push of creativity. In 1791, Mozart entered the last year of his life. No one knew it would be the last, not even him. That year, he composed some of the most powerful music of his entire career. The Magic Flute. One remarkable moment came when he met Emanuel Schikaneder, an actor and theater manager. Schikaneder asked Mozart to write a German-language opera for his theater. Mozart agreed. Together, they created The Magic Flute. The opera was different from Mozart's earlier works. It mixed fantasy, comedy, and philosophy. It included simple, folk-like melodies and complex symbolic scenes. It was written for ordinary people, not for royal courts. The music glowed with warmth and wonder. It contained some of the most memorable melodies in opera history. The premiere took place in September 1791. Mozart conducted the first performances himself. The audience loved it. Each night, more people came. It quickly became a huge success. Mozart felt proud. He finally saw a joyful response in Vienna again. The Clarinet Concerto. In the same year, Mozart wrote the Clarinet Concerto for his friend Anton Stadler. The piece is gentle, graceful, and full of warmth. Many consider it the greatest clarinet concerto ever written. It reflects Mozart's late style, clear lines, soft colors, and deep emotion. The Clemenza di Tito. He also wrote another opera, the Clemenza di Tito, for the coronation of Emperor Leopold II. The opera was composed quickly under tight deadlines. Some listeners liked it. Others felt it was old-fashioned. But modern audiences appreciate its beauty and purity. The Mysterious Commission. In mid-1791, Mozart received a secretive commission. A stranger, dressed in gray, delivered a message. He asked Mozart to write a requiem mass, a sacred music for the dead. He said the work was for a nobleman who wanted to keep the composer a secret. Mozart accepted the commission, but the message troubled him. He felt watched. He grew anxious. At times, he believed the mysterious visitor was a sign of his own death. He told Constanze, "I fear I am writing this requiem for myself." These words reveal his emotional exhaustion. He worked on the requiem between other projects. He balanced multiple deadlines. His health began to fail. Mozart's final illness. By November 1791, Mozart became seriously ill. He suffered from fever, swelling, and weakness. He tried to keep working. He dictated parts of the requiem to his student Franz Xaver Süssmayr. He believed he could finish it, but his body grew weaker each day. Constanze stayed by his side. She cared for him, comforted him, and helped him with small tasks. Friends visited him. They tried to lift his spirit. On December 4th, the day before he died, Mozart asked singers and musicians to gather around his bed. He wanted to hear parts of the requiem. They sang what he had completed. Mozart listened carefully. He made small comments about the phrasing and details. Even at the edge of death, he thought like a composer. That night, he lost consciousness. On December 5, 1791, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart died. He was 35 years old. After his death, Mozart's funeral was simple. Vienna did not give him a grand ceremony. He was buried in a common grave, following normal practice for most citizens. His exact resting place today is unknown, but his music lived on. Constanze worked hard to protect Mozart's legacy. She organized memorial concerts. She helped publish his works. She raised their children. She also remarried later in life, but she never stopped honoring Mozart's name. Friends and musicians continued to perform his music. Students studied his techniques. Composers admired his mastery. Beethoven once said, "It is Mozart who is the greatest composer of all." His work spread across Europe, then across the world. Today, Mozart is considered one of the greatest musical minds in history. His music remains alive in concert halls, operas, classrooms, and homes. A final reflection. Mozart's life was short, but filled with brilliance. He grew from a child prodigy into a mature master. He lived with passion, curiosity, and creativity. His struggles did not break him. His losses did not silence him. His financial challenges did not stop his imagination. He left more than 600 works. Each piece carries his spirit. His melodies move from joy to sorrow, from light to darkness, from simplicity to complexity. His music speaks to people of every age, culture, and background. He lived fast. He created endlessly. He died young. But he changed the world of music forever. Thanks for staying with me until the end of today's story. I hope you learned something new, improved your English, and felt inspired by Mozart's life. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories every week. See you in the next one. Until then, keep learning and keep growing.